Good Gab, sponsored by Skillskin, a nonprofit organization empowering individuals with disabilities through employment. Today we get the pleasure to meet with Lance Kissler. This is a communication, PR, and marketing guru. That's Steve McBride term. But Lance, we're happy to see you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Wow, you really took the level up a notch there.
Well, now you got to bring the fire, right? It's like, here we go. I know.
Set that bar high to start with.
Well, you were just telling me that you've been in Spokane here for a whole long time, though, huh?
Yeah, I've been back in Spokane since 2010, so 13 years. I did grow up in the area, so I grew up in a small rural farm town. You may have seen an exit sign for it on the freeway on I-90. It's called Odessa.
Odessa, all right.
Yeah, known for its German festivals. So if you like the chicken dance, some polka music, German beer, and food, then
that's your
there.
spot?
Yeah.
Nice.
In September, third weekend in September. Little plug there for my hometown.
Oh, they love it.
Yeah.
Well, so what have you been up to lately here? You're working at EWU. Like, what's happening over there?
Well, so the higher ed landscape is in a difficult time right now. Over the past few years, and even growing kind of into before the pandemic. But the pandemic, of course, I think everybody who probably goes on to different podcasts and talk shows these days talk about how much the pandemic just shone a light on issues that were already there.
Right.
And it really expanded them. So for us, the rising cost of tuition, which everybody does every single year for the most part. Student loan debt, the perceived value of a degree, conversations around our students being, taught what to think rather than how to think. So it gets into like political ideology and so on and so forth. You could just list.
There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of variables.
A lot of stuff going on. So then, you throw the pandemic on top of that, and then the big shift to distance learning, remote learning, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of places said, we could never teach a class, online before. And then guess what?
We did it.
Right? Yeah. Maybe not very well, but we all had to make do with what we had available.
Truth be told, that was the only class I ever dropped was an online class.
Yeah.
It was astronomy. It was harder than hell. And couldn't do it. So these youngins who can do it, good job.
Oh, yeah. I was teaching a class online during the pandemic, and it was definitely a course that could be taught online. It just, the quick jump from in-person instruction to online instruction, I know a lot of people were struggling with that. And, certainly the students struggled the most, but our own faculty, our own staff, everyone really struggled with that big transition because many of us had not taught online before. We didn't know how to.
That's a new skill set, right?
Exactly. So you're learning on the fly. So that brought into question, if this can just be taught online, why am I paying to live on campus? Or why can't I just go get this program from another online provider? I mean, it just really talk about disruptors. The pandemic was certainly a disruptor for higher education. So that has been a challenge for us, is really kind of getting people back into what does higher education mean? What is the value of a degree? Why should you consider Eastern? Why should you consider living on campus? Or however you might want to engage with the university. But I will say something that has stayed strong throughout the pandemic has been our alumni and our supporters. In fact, year over year, we've continued to actually fundraise more and more. So that's pretty exciting.
Great metric.
Yeah. I think that's something we should be proud of. Is
Absolutely.
That it shows when people are willing to, say, I'm willing to give and not get something in return, which if you look at, students and enrollment, they're paying to get something in return, right?
Yeah, it's a business transaction.
Exactly. So when you look at donors who are saying, for the most part, you know, I'm not expecting something specific in return, I'm expecting this to make a difference for others, that to me says a lot. They say that they believe in who we are and what we do and what we bring to the table. So that was exciting to see over the pandemic, but what we have seen challenges around is enrollment. Our
Right.
enrollment numbers aren't what we would like them to be.
What are they these days?
They're around the 10,000-ish mark, but here's the thing. Higher ed is like a investment portfolio, if you will. So you've got different types of stocks, to keep this little analogy going,
I like
that you
it.
can invest in. And each stock comes with a different kind of return. Each stock has a different value associated with it. So, and not that students by any means should be looked at as numbers or price tags or anything along those lines, but every student does have a dollar amount attached to what they bring in, right? At the end of the day,
That's just math.
Right, yes. So students can bring in a certain dollar amount based upon, are they a resident, are they a non-resident, are they in an undergraduate program, a graduate program, are they in an online program, how much scholarships do they, all these different variables. And so when we look at our current portfolio, it isn't bringing in the amount of revenue that we would like to see based upon past portfolios.
Makes sense. You need a robust group. It makes
Right.
perfect sense.
Yeah. So when
And those numbers are about the same numbers when I was there. I was there in like 2004, and I think we were just eclipsing the 9,000, getting towards 10,000
I
students.
think
That's
Eastern
20
got
years
up-
ago.
Yeah, I think Eastern got up to about 12,000 maybe in the late 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. There was a nice boom, if you will, in the numbers. And the numbers were I don't want to say the right kind of numbers, but they were the numbers that definitely brought more revenue in than based upon numbers that we see today.
Well, you build infrastructure. And did you go to Eastern before you?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So a little bit about my journey. So I grew up in Odessa, as I said.
Coming to the big city of Spokane.
Yeah. The smoke-free class of 2000. I don't know if anybody remembers that promise that was made, but there was a song that we had to sing. We had to learn and sing growing up, and I think
I think I didn't listen to that one. I was that bad kid on the street.
it was the
Your class of 2000?
yeah.
So am I.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't remember the "We are the smoke-free class of 2000"?
No, I think I was smoking on the corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you were one of that percentage. That
Yeah,
didn't
I
make
was.
it.
Sorry. Sorry, Drug Free America. No.
So graduated in 2000, went to Eastern. I will admit Eastern was not actually on my options that I was looking at the time. I'd applied to a handful of different institutions, both locally and nationally. And Eastern called one day and said, hey, we'd like to offer you a basic, not a full ride, but basically a tuition waiver. And,
Awesome.
Yeah, and my parents said, that's where you're going to go, right? Because that made the financial sense to them. So, and I'm glad that that's what happened because I had an amazing experience there. So much so that I said, sign me up again. I'll do another 2 years. Those 2 years turned into much longer because I went into the master's program and as they warn you going into graduate programs, you got to stay focused. And I had a real difficult time staying focused on my thesis.
Uh-huh.
And so by the act of some great mentors and friends and colleagues, I finally completed my thesis that was 2010.
Was that in communication?
Yes.
So we were like in this. I was in communication at Eastern too, the same time
Okay.
frame.
Yeah.
So people like Patty Chantrell
Yes.
and
I
Kissling.
Yes. So I would occasionally get emails that were either meant for Dr. Kissling or they thought that we were married because our last names were so close.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So we're totally in similar orbits. How did I
were.
not know you?
Yeah. Were you in the undergraduate program?
Yeah, I
then?
was,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's because us grad students were mostly downtown at the Spokane Center and in the evening.
That makes
so
sense.
that we could go to the bars afterwards.
Smart.
Right.
Yeah. In the
Or
old in the
during.
old EWU.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Right from the Blue Star or wherever that. Yeah. that was
You're bringing back some great memories.
There were some great debriefs after classes that happened down there. So, Yeah, so I finished, I walked in 2006, but didn't finish until 2010. So I started working at Eastern, actually, for about a year and a half, and then I got an opportunity in 2007 to move down to just outside of Portland. There's a small private liberal arts institution called Pacific University, and had a great experience there. I was there for 3 years, heading up the marketing operation there, and then this opportunity came to move back to Spokane, and I started at STCU, and that really kind of jump-started my engagement here in Spokane, because part of my role at STCU is to be out in the community making connections.
So what did you find when
Yeah.
you were out working around?
Well, so one of the first calls that I got when I came back was from the Inland Northwest Business Alliance, which is the regional LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. And coming from Portland, where the community there was much broader and much more open, and environment was much more accepting, I wasn't certain what to think about, because I had to make a big decision. It's not that I wasn't out, but I wasn't really out and about professionally.
Copy.
So, connecting personal and professional life. For me, it was one of those, if it comes up in a conversation, it comes up in a conversation. But otherwise, professionally, I am who I am, right? I'm
Sure.
here, I'm representing my company, and, that's that, right? So,
But how awesome to be able to connect everything.
yeah,
It was a
well,
brave moment, though.
it was. And so I joined the board, and first I joined the organization, and that quickly turned into a board ask. And so
That happens.
Yeah.
Never. No.
You got to watch out for those hospitality suites. Those are the worst. And now I realize that they're a good strategy to use when you're trying to recruit your own board members.
Absolutely.
So yeah, have a couple of drinks and then make the ask. So I got involved with INBA, and it was a great experience, because I really got to network with a lot of other professionals, and a lot of professionals who at the same time I knew supported me in who I am personally, right? And so that was a great, fantastic experience. That got me involved in so many other things, especially with STCU too. I have to give props. One of the things I loved about that organization was they had a great volunteer program. And so we were actually encouraged to go out and volunteer above and beyond our commitments that many of us would have officially. So some of us had kind of more of those official rules where
This is what we do.
This is what we do, right? Like I am here representing STCU on this board or on this whatever it might be. So many of us would go and do things like I'd volunteer with the Red Cross, with the Spokane Humane Society, and Spokane AIDS Network, and a number of different other organizations over the years. And it was just great because we were given the space and we were encouraged to do so.
And you had a lot of skills that nonprofits need, marketing,
Yeah.
PR, communication. It's like a lot of organizations kind of lack that talent.
They love that additional perspective that we can bring. Even if they do have some of that talent or skill set themselves, having someone from the outside, so to speak, bring a different perspective on marketing, communications, and PR really can be valuable for them.
There's a lot of people listening, to this podcast that are,
Yeah.
involved in nonprofits across our community. Any quick tips and tricks, from our local guru?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say, okay, so if you don't have someone with that kind of expertise on an advisory board or working group or whatever it might be, consider reaching out. There is a local organization that's kind of picking back up after the pandemic called Spokane PRSA. It's the Public Relations Society of America. So there is
I saw some of their
chapter.
events on LinkedIn pop up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a picture of me drinking a beer. We don't just do that, but those help. On occasion. So I would recommend reaching out to Spokane PRSA, or if you know someone who is a PR communications person, just reaching out to them, and they may connect you with someone. That I will say that many of us get tapped to do a lot of things for
I can
a lot of
imagine.
organizations. And so one of the best things that I ever learned was how to say thank you, but I'm already committed, which is basically
That's a heck of a skill.
no. However, Yeah. So anyway,
Teach me your ways. I'm just thinking about that. I'm like, I need to learn this.
Well, I've had to have that conversation with members of boards that I've served on, where I noticed that those individuals were not able to really be engaged at the level that the organization needed. And that's a challenging conversation to say, it's okay to back away, to step away from something. You can always come back. But if you want to be a part of moving this organization forward right now, then we need you in the here and now. And that means that there's a certain level of engagement and responsibility and activity, whatever it may be, that needs to be met. And if you're not able to do it right now, that's okay. Let us find someone who can do that right now, and we'll bring you back in when the time is right. We need to take care of ourselves first, and if we don't take care of ourselves first, then how can we take care of an organization or a cause that we care about, right?
That's really well said.
Yeah. So
I'm filing that away.
But that's not an easy conversation to always have, because so many people take pride in their commitments, in making a promise. And I always say it's not that you're breaking a promise, you're just acknowledging that situations change. So and you're still committed to your values and beliefs. It's just understanding that, things change, times change, things happen, and we have to adjust. I mean, none of us planned for a 2.5 year or whatever pandemic. And so many of us had to make adjustments. And I think many of us realized that we needed to take better care of ourselves coming through that and out of it to where we are today.
And then we can bring our best to the service.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're reaching out to folks that are in the industry that we know. Any other tips and tricks that you would say, should they have social media presence if they don't have anyone to run it?
Right. Yeah. Well, so that is one of the classes I teach is on social media and really how to use it professionally. Because so many of us engage personally on it that we don't always think about, what are the professional uses? And whenever I've talked to entities that are looking to start up a social media presence, certainly I always say to them, okay, what is your plan? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve with this? And what kind of resources are you going to put behind it? Because it'll be quickly noticed if you dump a whole bunch of stuff in and then just pull right out.
Right.
Or if you create that Facebook page and you assign it to an intern and then the intern leaves after 6 months. That's not long-term, that's not strategic, it's not sustainable. So
probably not helpful too, right? Because you're going to build some momentum and then it goes away.
Well, and then you have people showing up there, if they've got a problem or a concern and reaching out, and then they never hear back because no one's monitoring or whatever. So it just adds to the reputation risk in that case.
Great point.
You have to be ready to take the bad with the good. That's the other thing is as soon as you have a presence out there, you are open up for business on the spectator sport of social media. People love to use it without actually having a genuine one-on-one conversation with human beings these days. I think, the keyboard warriors, and it's so easy to post a manifesto than it is to sit down and have a conversation with someone. I've got a concern about something. Well, I'm going to go post it online and it's going to catch fire and my friends are going to support it and here off we go, right? And where's the long-term relationship in that? Where's the actual long-term and systemic change that happens? And that's something that I think, getting into some of the other stuff that I've been involved with here in Spokane, I'm 5.5 years in on the Human Rights Commission, and
tell us about the Human Rights Commission. I don't know if everyone really understands what they're up to.
Yeah, sure. So the Spokane Human Rights Commission was founded, I should know this because it's a trivia question that we ask people, but it was about 20, 30 years ago, somewhere around there, right?
Yeah, long time.
Not a long time. I mean, when you think about it, the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s happened, but even before then.
Great point.
UN Declaration of Human Rights and so on and so forth. So Spokane, in terms of having the commission, was a little bit behind the times, but we were also at least somewhat tangentially with the state, a little bit of a leader in the United States as far as civil rights laws and movements happened. There's an interesting presentation that my fellow commissioner and I have given about, we call it Bending Towards Justice, and it's about the history of civil rights kind of nationally and how Washington has always sort of been towards the leading edge of it, even though at certain times Spokane was a little bit of a lagged behind just a little bit, right? So the commission's been around since I think it was the early 90s, and we, over the past couple of years, have really been focused on standing up this Office of Civil Rights, Equity, and Inclusion. First started off just called the Office of Civil Rights, and there had been work done on this. I really need to give kudos, props, thanks to all the people who did a lot of work on this, not just in 2019-ish when we kind of really started kicking things off from the commission's perspective, but there had been a lot of work done before that. And I don't know who everyone all was that was involved, so I'm not going to list names because I don't want to accidentally leave someone out, but I do want to give thanks to the collective group and people who had worked on it prior to December of 2019. That's when the commission said, we're going to start a task force. We need to get going on this. We need to find out, is this viable? Is this feasible? What is it going to take to set this up? What should it look like? And so we engaged with a number of different community partners from the from Gonzaga's Center for Hate Studies to the NAACP, to Greater Spokane Progress, and you name the group, and it was probably somehow connected to this task force.
Yeah,
that we
bringing
put together.
everybody together.
Right. Yeah, at least as much as we could. And then, of course, so December 2019, a couple months later, I think we had one planning or kickoff meeting in person, and then boom, pandemic hit. So that definitely put a little bit of, it didn't douse the flame, but it certainly closed the air vent, and it didn't pick up the traction that it could have had. So we worked on it, continued to work on it, and I don't know all of the political things that happened during that time. I think it probably depends on who you talk to about whether or not this was moving and that wasn't moving and so on and so forth. But we knew that we wanted to stay steadfast on at least some sort of an office needs to be established. And I think, I don't remember who it was brought it up at one point that said, don't let perfection get in the way of progress. Right.
Great saying.
And I think that so many of us get stuck on, this is what we have in mind, this is the picture that we have, and so if it doesn't look like that, then we're not doing it, or it's wrong, or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
right?
you gotta have that iterative process and just let it evolve.
I mean, you look at civil rights in particular over time, things didn't just always happen overnight, and they didn't always happen perfectly either. I mean, we're still working. I mean, what do they call the United States? The great, project or democratic, whatever it is, that we're still to this very day trying to figure out what makes our society not perfect, but function really well.
Absolutely.
Right? So it wasn't until, I want to say it was 2021 that the office got approved, and then...
So this is within the city government,
within the city
right?
government, yeah. So the Human Rights Commission provides advice to City Council. We are not an investigative body, a regulatory body. We don't, we don't fine anyone or any of that kind of stuff. We're basically the entity that can write a strongly worded letter, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
But a true advisor.
But a true advisor, right. So so we would definitely have people come to us like, why aren't you, doing that? We're not an activist group. I would say we are more about advocacy.
I love that.
That kind of, not that there is a place for activism, but with a city municipal entity, that's not our role. And that's been really difficult to kind of work with some groups and some individuals who just don't understand that kind of separation of roles. And I was the chair for 3 years, and of course during the pandemic we had a lot of civil unrest around certain social issues.
Yeah, we did.
And I think that there were some expectations that at least myself as the chair should be out with a megaphone.
That's a lot of pressure, and you're like, no, we're advocates.
Throwing rocks and, doing all sorts of stuff, burning the place down. And That's not the role of the commission or the chair, and that's also not who I am as a person. I'm a collaborator. I'm someone who wants to build a relationship with people, even if it's someone who I maybe don't fully agree with. I think that there is value in forming some sort of relationship because there's probably something we can agree on, and maybe that agreement can get us closer to the next thing. And that comes back to the whole don't let perfection come in the way of progress, is that, all right, we may have to take some steps, and we're not going to get all the way to where we want to be. So we went through a process of trying to, once the office was stood up, so to speak, I guess stood up isn't really the word. It was created in the city's municipal code.
Okay.
Right. So
you have been codified.
You have been, yes. It is there, but there is no actual physical office. There are no people. There's just, a budget line item, and now we got to, do the rest of the work, right? So
that's good. There's a budget associated with this.
Yes,
now that's a big step.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I was pushing for, because I know how this works, you can have great and talented people, but if they don't have any money to do anything with, then you're not going to get anywhere, or at least you're not going to get very far very fast, right? So having an operational expense budget was important because people need to continue to stay up to date on trainings and professional development. They need to develop as a PR and marketing communications person materials. They need to conduct outreach. All of that stuff costs money. Right. And so if they don't have the budget to do that, then you're really hamstringing them from being able to do what they need to do.
Well, good for Spokane, to prioritize. So what's the vision? What will this part of the office do?
So, gosh, I wish I would have brought my diagram with me. It's been a while since I've presented about or talked about the office specifically, but there were kind of three main buckets that I recall from doing outreach and education to policy stuff, and I'm trying to remember what the third one was, but I think maybe it was the complaint handling piece, because there are some pieces underneath Title 18 of the city's code around public accommodations, employment, and housing, discrimination in those three particular areas. I think that there will be some growing areas related to one of the things we're working on is basically a bill of rights for people who are houseless. So what is the minimum that we expect individuals who are currently in a houseless situation, how do we respect them and dignify them, right?
Because that's really progressive.
Well, we have so many kind of expectations and protections in place for those who are not. And you look at like landlords and tenants and so on. Well, why not those people who are not in those situations?
Why not?
Why not, right? And thinking about people as human beings, and painting a picture of them as a holistic person, and not just a number, not just putting them into, oh, well, they suffer from this, or it's because of that, or whatever. So that's something that we've been working on. I could see that becoming part of Title 18 as well. One of the other things that really came forward was the issue around the Monahan statue. So that's like just down the road from where we are at, literally down the road. And so we took a look at that, and we discovered that the city didn't really have a formal process in place that was open and transparent and really brought the stakeholders in place. We had seen what happened with Wistock's Way, which was great, good progress there, but that was kind of its own little exploration of trying to figure out how to address something.
And how to do it within the code.
Right, and how to do it within the code, and how to involve the right partners, and not just change something, but actually, kind of move forward to the healing process as well. So I
love that you're thinking about the more holistic approach.
Yeah, well,
it's not one thing just to like change a name, right? It's
exactly. Yeah, and
it's
then
the
say,
meaning behind it. Oh, everything's good,
and move on. I will say that is something I will admit that it wasn't until being on the commission and all of the stuff that happened during the pandemic with social justice issues, I didn't really think about things that way prior to then. So my mindset and my approach really did evolve. And I think part of that is accepting the fact that we don't know everything. Right? We're constantly learning, we're constantly evolving, and there's this level of humility that you need to have that just because I think one way today doesn't mean I might not think a different way tomorrow. And so that was something that I really took forward, and I think it's important for us to be thinking about. So that's a new lens that I've been trying to use with my work on the commission. So that office is almost kind of up and running. They've been going through some director searches.
It's in the hiring process right now.
Right. Yeah. I think they're getting ready to announce a hire. I don't know all the details, but I removed myself from the process after the first round. That would be a whole nother podcast that we would have to have, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, you can come back, Lance. Thank you.
So what I learned, in working with city government and community-based agencies and organizations on how to hire, that would be, I could probably write a book.
But this is happening.
It's happening, yeah, and
that is a light in our city.
It is, yes.
It's not just talk. We're putting money, literally money, about this. Here we go.
Yeah, and I hope that so I only have 6 months left on the commission, and then I term off. So then I'll be looking for kind of my next thing to go out and put my energy and attention into. Going back to that whole, you only got. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to quick diversion here. One of my good friends and former colleagues shared with me the concept of spoons, which is at the day.
Enlighten us.
Okay, yeah. So at the beginning of the day, you start with a certain number of spoons. And throughout the day, as people approach you or as work comes up or whatever it is, every time someone is kind of taking from you emotionally or psychologically or mentally or whatever, you're giving away a spoon. And at some point, you have to say, I don't have any spoons left.
Yeah, it's finite.
Right? It's a finite amount. And so you have to choose to say, am I going to give a spoon to this or not? And that can be really difficult to do because some of us really want to always help. And
I'm that way.
Right? Yeah.
It sounds like you're that way.
It's difficult to say no. And so
But you only have so many spoons.
Only have so many spoons. And so, one of the spoons will be coming back, which is the work with the commission, because that does take time and energy. And so that will be something that I'll look at is, do I hold on to that spoon for a while? Do I find a new place to give it to? What is there a new direction I should be looking at that maybe provides me with a different sense of self satisfaction or self-worth or whatever you want to call it?
Is anything brewing right now in your mind, that you could share?
I've had some preliminary conversations with a couple of my friends about and colleagues who have some boards that are some organizations that are looking for some help on their boards. So there may be a couple of things out there that I might look at, but once again, I'm just kind of, I don't know, I want to wait and see what happens because things could happen between now and then. I don't know what the next 6 months are going to bring, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself on stuff. So, yeah. So I'm excited to see where the office goes. I hope that the commission will have been left in a better place than when I found it. That's one of my beliefs, is that we come into the world
good as the chair,
and yeah, and that we, however we leave the world, hopefully we've made somewhat of a better place with our contributions. And so my goal was to really try to make the commission more sophisticated. So building in a lot of let's revamp our bylaws. Let's make sure we have processes in place.
That's a lot of the hard work that no one's willing to take on.
It is, yeah.
It's necessary for longevity's sake.
Exactly. Well, that's one of the things that happened. I was vice chair, and we had our chair left because she termed off during the middle of, so the appointments were, commissioners were appointed on not a calendar year, but from an anniversary date. That's the best way to put it. So if you started in June, then
new appointments
3 years out from that June, then you either termed off or you got reappointed, and you can be reappointed once. So they're 3-year terms, so you could serve 6 years altogether. But our officer cycles were on a calendar year basis, January through December. So we had our chair termed off during the middle of their calendar year appointment, right? And I'm like, okay, this does not make sense.
No, it does not.
Right?
We got to fix this.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, okay, so this is where the vice chair would step in, sure. But, you know, what happens if you have multiple people? Like, this really does not make sense. And then I had one of the other commissioners who'd been on the commission for quite some time, decided to step down, and I was quickly realizing we've got some leadership transition continuity stuff that we need to address. And so part of what my work then was working with the mayor's office to say, all right, let's appoint people on a calendar year cycle so that, you know, they would start and end with any officer appointments. Let's also look at staggering those appointments so that we don't have like 6 of the 9 commissioners all term off on the same year.
Yeah, we lose all of this knowledge.
Exactly. So that's part of that sophistication piece, right? Is that people don't really think about that helps with sustainability and continuity for an organization. So hopefully I've left the commission in a better spot. There's still work to be done in that regard. And then the Office of Civil Rights, Equity, and Inclusion. That was the other thing that I said. By the time I'm done with serving with the commission, I want to see this office actually up and going. So,
well, it sounds like it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's what it sounds
Lance,
like.
that's something to be very proud of, and you know, I'm sure our listeners are thinking about this. I know I am anyway. It's like Spokane, we are fortunate to, you know, have you and all the effort that you put on, and just sometimes you just raise your hand. You don't know what you're going to get into.
Yeah.
And you did it.
Well, and I want to go back to, there were so many people involved, and there are some people who did some really heavy lifting. I probably just got to be the face of it at times, given the role as the chair of the commission as leading the commission's task force. There was another working group that was going on, and of course all of the people who had their various contributions. So by no means do I want it to appear that, oh, you know, without Lance this would not have happened. I think hopefully what I brought was the ability to get people organized, to keep people, you know, moving along, and to apply pressure when pressure was needed, to back channel when back channel was needing, to find compromise, whatever it was, to keep moving progress forward, right? Hopefully that's what I was able to do with it. And it was all of the great research, it was all of the great writing, it was all of the great presentations, it was the outreach and all the other stuff that everybody else brought to the table that really made it a success. So,
good gabbers. That's the words of a real servant leader right there. Lance, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up servant leadership. So Leadership Spokane, class of 2014. I will give a plug to Leadership
2020.
Spokane. Yeah, I think servant leadership is so important. Many of us don't know that we're going to end up in a position of leadership. We just end up, you know, getting called to serve. We end up getting an appointment. You know, with great power comes great responsibility, quote, right? And I think, you know, I've never really been a fan of people who seek out leadership positions because they want to direct people.
They want to be bosses,
they
not
want to be
leaders.
Bosses. Yeah, it's positional authority as opposed to, you know, really having that genuine relationship and that altruistic approach.
The reluctant leader is my favorite leader.
Yeah.
I will follow them all the time.
Yes, exactly. So, I think that, you know, some of us are, it doesn't mean that people who run and campaign for office or whatever it might be, it doesn't mean that that's what they're looking for. It may just be them raising their hand to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do, you know, so.
It's my time.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have great respect for those folks, especially in our environment today. I know I had thought at one point about running for political office, and then I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, ready for all of that heavy.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a, going back to the spectator sport on social media, you know, I feel like people just are so quick to dehumanize one another and in order to, you know, advance their own cause or advance themselves, whatever it is. And, you know, I don't have a spoon for that. So, yeah.
Lance, thanks for joining us today.
Thank
I
you for
know,
having
you know, our listeners can definitely be watching what you're up to next, including me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.